Okay, we'll call the meeting to order.
300 comments.
Hey, Wayne, do you have an extra copy?
Whenever you're ready, okay. Need a resolution to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
I'll move it.
Resolution by John, second by Evelyn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, we'll go with planning first. Wayne?
If I may, under the committee actions requested, I'd like to leave number 1 until later because it's part of a larger discussion that we'll have. Number 2, on the committee request is I'd like the committee's approval to attend the National Planning Conference in Seattle. The money would come out of a capital fund that we have from a grant. I'm required every 2 years to undertake certification training, and the 2 real critical components of that are the law and the ethics credits, and I can only get those at a conference of some sort. So,
Well, that's number 3, isn't it, Wayne?
Number 2.
number 2.
Oh, no, it's number 3.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, I apologize, I skipped down, that's number 3, so.
All right, go ahead. You moving it?
Yeah, isn't there any state or regional or New England conference other than?
There is one that is being proposed, but right now they have, and actually Patricia is working on the conference committee for that. They do not have the law and ethics credits lined up, so, and I need them by December, so.
What would be the cost?
In total with the registration, travel, and whatever, it's about $2,400. And that's proposed to come out of capital fund H, 392 or 352, whatever. So.
Okay, John, I think you said you were moving that, right? Did you move that?
Well,
He didn't move it, I think he just asked, but I'll move it.
Oh, I asked him if he was moving it, he said yeah, but.
I'll move it.
All right. Do we need a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Or further discussion, I should say. No further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
All right, to go back to the original number 2, the state has released a notice of funding availability for housing programs. We'd like the opportunity to submit under those. If we can find projects or a project that will meet their definition, but you know, the department's asking for the committee's consideration to give us the opportunity to submit.
Are these typically no match, or?
These would be no match, as far as I can tell right now, looking at the legislation.
Moved by Evelyn, second by John. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Number 4 is to establish the capital fund to administer the recent Department of State award. This grant award was for $410,450 for projects that I will discuss later. Because there's some new committee members, last year I kind of failed in the process here to update them, so I want to do a review of the capital funds and where we are in the First Wilderness Program, and so I can talk about the specific projects here in a few minutes. But this has been, I went through the Treasurer's office to establish this, so I'd request the committee's recommendation and authorization to establish the fund.
Okay. Someone like to move it? Evelyn? Second. John? Any discussion?
I will say there are matching funds required, and the investment by Saratoga North Creek and Iowa Pacific into the county's owned infrastructure counts as the match. So the match is provided by operations of the railroad.
How much admin is in that 410? Is that?
I think it's $75,000.
Okay. Any other questions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Number 5 is to establish CD 74. The scary part is that when I came to work here, we were on CD two. But anyway, CD 74 is for connection of Countryside Adult Home to the Warrensburg Sewer. This will be a project jointly undertaken with the town of Warrensburg. And I'd ask the committee's authorization to establish the codes for that.
Move that.
Moved by John, second by Evelyn. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
The last is, resolution, for right now is we have an existing memorandum of understanding with the communities along the First Wilderness Corridor, for implementation of the, grant awards. Last year and this year's funding, we received, funding that would go to not-for-profits or an authority. So we have to amend our agreement to make them eligible to participate and receive funds. So that's what this would do is authorize the county attorney's office to make those changes to the intermunicipal agreement, and so we can move forward with the project.
Okay. John? I'll move it. Second by Evelyn. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
The referral, again, refers to what I had as agenda item number 1 there under elimination of 911 fees. Again, we'll talk about that under the information for discussion and review, if that's okay with it.
Okay.
All right. What I'd like to do for the briefing for the committee is kind of quickly go through on the screens the current programs that we're administering under the First Wilderness. We have, we have 7 different grant awards that we're administering, totaling about $5.8 million in projects. There are 39 separate and distinct projects that are currently either underway or proposed, and right now we're administering, I believe it's 24 separate contracts with consulting firms for either design, construction, or other elements. So it's a very intricate and convoluted process, but it is really for the benefit of establishing improvements in the public infrastructure along the rail corridor and in those communities that would allow them to better utilize and market their resources. So with that, Sarah is going to run the keyboard here to kind of talk about where we are. The little, what we call the worm, that blue line, is actually the First Wilderness Corridor, and it extends from Saratoga Springs to Tahawus. And the unifying characteristics of that is the river rail corridor, the county-owned rail line, the town of Corinth-owned rail line, and the Hudson River. And so in 2007, we were awarded projects amounting for just about a little over $1 million, and that grant needs to be closed out this year. So we're really working to finalize those projects. And one of the major components of that is North Creek streetscape work. That is in design phase right now with the LA group. As a matter of fact, I got their final report yesterday. So construction on some of those improvements will begin in the spring. We have previously bid out some sidewalk replacement work that the contractor will be in May. It's a county-owned road through North Creek, so the county DPW is involved and been working with us on that. Kevin Hagels has been really invaluable as far as getting the bid specs together, in Lake Luzerne, we're doing basically the same thing, and on that one, I can't read it. Right. This was, when the station at Hadley was built, there was a $90,000 shortfall to make the connection and do the parking lot and do some of the infrastructure. So we secured grant funding to do that and be part of that project. So that element is complete. We are The first wilderness plan was done, started in 1999. The plan itself was finalized in '01, and in '04 we did the action plan, which spelled out 214 separate projects. We are in the process of updating that action plan. We're doing that internally with a number of meetings with the communities, and that we hope to have finished by the end of June. We also have some marketing funding, and that's what Pam Morin in the office is involved with. Pam works with a number of communities and with events in the local communities to help them publish and market, and to do some quarter-wide, the driving map that you've seen previously, and some other materials. So. In 2008, we were awarded $516,000. Go ahead. And again, we secured additional funding for the train station complex in North Creek on the when they acquired the property from the Open Space Institute. We've been undertaking some improvements to the buildings and the site there. What we are in the process also of doing is developing working with the railroad, their marketing people. We're looking at doing a coordinated marketing approach, and so we're drafting that coordination and plan to do that. Sarah has been working diligently on updating the First Wilderness website page. We're going with a WordPress format, and we're close to rolling that out. The draft is out there. It's a matter of she's waiting for me and for Pam to give her feedback on that. So, in 2009, we received another $832,000. Go ahead. And in we had a contract with the LA Group, or the town did, to assess their water district and identify all the needs. And so that report is done. We will look to secure funding and additional applications to implement components of that. The other component in Chestertown was a Main Street program, streetscape, sidewalks, streetlights. The design for that was done by Being Planning out of Saratoga, and that is in. It's mostly done for what we have the money for, but it identified a number of follow-on projects that we will look at coordinating with the town on. The town of Stony Creek has a management agreement with the Environmental School of Forestry for management of a piece of property known as Dean Farm. And we've been working with the town to develop that as a recreation area. I will say that it's a great project, and people need to get out there and look at what 2 or 3 part-time employees of the town have done with limited resources. It's frankly to be commended. It's really a great project. So, in town of Lake Luzerne, there's funding for sidewalks to continue a previous streetscape program to carry that from Stone's Pharmacy down to the Route 9 intersection where Stewart's is. That's currently under design by CLA Site out of Saratoga, and I believe the town is interested in actually doing the construction work in the spring once those designs are finalized. 2009, part of that was for wayfinding signage. That in the December committee meeting, there was a contract approved with Shannon Rose out of Saratoga. There's been some issues getting that contract to closure. I believe the county attorney's office has resolved some of those insurance issues. So hopefully we'll have that and get the signage updated and the informational kiosks at the train stations and other sites come spring. The county DPW forces are actually constructing the kiosks. They were designed by Alon out of Saratoga. We have administrative services as part of that, so. 2011, $926,000 plus. We have some improvements at Dynamite Hill. We're working with Supervisor Monroe to replace the lift and some of the ski trails to upgrades to those. So that's ongoing. We hope to bid out the new ski tow here shortly. I'm just waiting for some technical specs from Supervisor. So, we secured additional funding for streetscape work in North Creek to continue the previous project. So again, that will extend what was known as the Mundy property to undertake some development on that site and make the direct connection to the train station to the main street, a straight visual shot and a walkway that goes up through there, and some seating areas and some improvements to that site. We were able to secure funding to enclose both the Hadley and the Thurman stations as part of this award. The Warren County DPW did that. Those projects are complete. There's the Hadley one. We also secured funding. The town of Corinth in Saratoga County is a partner in the Memorandum of Understanding for the corridor, and we secured funding for them to design and eventually replace their train station that that basically they had to tear down a number of years ago because of its condition. That is under design with Matt Rogers Planning and with Saratoga Associates. We secured funding to help the folk school in Lake Luzerne with some building improvements and some upgrades, ADA compliance. That has stalled in recent times, but now it's back on track, and so I think we're going to move forward with that. Supervisor Merlino was gracious enough to host a meeting where we all had a chance to kind of rethink how we're going to approach this. So that's moving forward. Again, we received a small amount of additional marketing funds, which we're using to work with the communities on. And improvement implementation money. 2012, another $616,000. And that was for, the major chunk of that is for the bandstand in Warrensburg as part of a streetscape improvement. We have done asbestos abatement there, and environmental monitoring. Town forces have done some work. That has been bid. Mid-State Industries got the bid on that, and we'll do the renovation work in the spring. And then the town will complement that with work on the ADA compliant bathroom and that first level. So that one should be done in the spring. Additionally, the old board and paper site on 418, the town received ownership of that, and we're working with the town and Chazen group to do a design for a waterfront park there, passive park, not a very active, but improvements that would allow the public to access the waterway downriver from the dam. Again, we secured funding for the town of Corinth to build a platform, not a station, but at least to start the process at their site based on the plans from the previous award. And then the administrative funds were part of that. 2013 was a $1.1 million award, and that we are working with the Sacandaga Hudson River Advisory Council, which is actually an authority for management of the dams on the Sacandaga, and working with them to develop their whitewater rodeo park at underneath where basically at the confluence of the Sacandaga and the Hudson in Hadley and Lake Luzerne. They are working with McLaughlin and Whitewater out of, I believe it's Alexandria, Virginia, and, we just received yesterday, or day before yesterday, yeah, it came in over the weekend, the technical specs, which are 186 pages that I've given to Julie, for development of a bid proposal, for that. I will say that the purchasing office has been great. We've done a lot of bids through them, and the reason we're doing that, even though these are local projects, is the county is the grantee, and we are responsible to make sure that procurement has been complied with. Therefore, the county will bid it, the towns enter into the contracts. We secured additional funding for Dean Farm for restroom facilities and to improve the parking area and access. And that is under design by Cedarwood Engineering at this point in time for the restroom facility. Again, in the town of Stony Creek, the Four Corners, the entrance to the community, there's some publicly owned property that the town, in the smart growth plan that was done by LaBerge, identified some improvements to that. We secured funding for those improvements. The design is currently underway by CLA site out of Saratoga. We secured additional funding for the folk school for a new blacksmith shop. That project is a little bit up in the air. There may be some alterations to that, but you know, we're still working with them on improvements to that property. And then in 2014, which is the new capital fund that was requested for establishment here, received $820,000 worth of projects. The first is the update of the corridor market study. I will say that there was $100,000 for the update to the market study. It does not go to the railroad. It is a county award. The county will be doing the market study. It is not an award to Saratoga North Creek. And the idea of that is to, we had two previous market studies done, one in participation with SEDC out of Saratoga, and one when we first acquired the line. And that what we want to look now is what is the economic impact of the current operation, and with all the multipliers and whatever. And if they got to got to Rensselaer for passenger service, where there's 10 trains a day versus 2 out of Saratoga, and the connection to New York City, what does that do for their numbers, and what is the cost in infrastructure investment, rolling stock, and personnel to make that happen? Is there a return on investment? And that's information for us and for them. So we will be undertaking that as soon as we can. We have to get the contract document approved by the state, but we're working on that now. Okay. We also secured, with all the streetscape work in North Creek, it was determined during the process that, you know, the water lines are from the 40s or earlier, so we put in new sidewalks, and they're ripping up 6 or 7 every year to replace water lines that are breaking or whatever. So we secured a little over $100,000 for water lines, and the water district will pay for their installation. We're just paying for the materials. The Hamlet in North Creek has looked for a number of years to attract either a larger lodging facility or some improvements to their economic base. And you know, a lot of the hotels, the chain hotels, say that they require public sewer. So the town undertook a feasibility study with Cedarwood Engineering a couple years ago. It determined that, you know, how a public sewer could be laid out. We're taking that to the next step for what's called a map and plan report that the town could then file with the Department of State and use for a public referendum to determine if that's how the community wants to go. The town of Chester had requested, this is a project that's been on the discussion for a long time, and that's a trail connection from Chestertown up along the Scroon to Pottersville and eventually to Scaroon Manor. And so we secured funding to lay that out and determine the feasibility, you know, what kind of property crossings or easements would be necessary, what's public land, how it could be laid out. So that's another component. And similar from the town of Corinth, they have a couple 100-acre parcel with the old, I think it's 400 acres, where the old town reservoir is on. They developed that into a, or are developing it into a recreation area. And the request was to identify, similar to Chester, how they could make a trail connection from the train station to there and to their downtown. So that, that I believe is going to go to Rogers Planning. Then in Stony Creek, which has become popular lately, I don't know. A community group with the library secured the church building next door and took ownership of it. They received funding, I believe it was from the Dormitory Authority and the Council on the Arts, to do some designs for a community center and an expansion of the library. They have done that, but need to get to the point of creating construction documents. So we secured funding to do that, and then they can take those construction documents to the Dormitory Authority or other agencies for funding. And next, is there any? So that's kind of the geographic distribution of the projects. It's a number of things. It keeps us busy, and you know, I just wanted to kind of update the committee on where they were, what we're doing. Some of you aren't familiar with this from over the years, so I just thought it was a good kind of year-end or year introduction review.
Very helpful.
So.
Good overview, Wayne. You know, I think we'd be lost if we didn't have somebody like yourself in there to keep your hands around this. It's 5.8 million in total projects, you said?
Yeah, 5.828, and ones that are currently open. We had received additional funding beforehand for other projects which are closed. I believe that was in the $2 million range in total. So.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, want to move on to E911?
The one thing I would like to touch base, because I think the 911 discussion will merit some time here. Under Section 239D, the county planning board is required to do a year-end report, since the department functions by local law as the planning agency for the county. The last page of the document identifies the projects that were reviewed. 279 projects were reviewed by staff, and the breakdown by community and by type is also provided. So that's just, as I said, that's to comply with Section 239D of General Municipal Law, to provide that report. I don't know if everybody here knows Sarah Frankenfeld. Sarah's been with the department, well, was here in late 90s into early 2000, left to go to the consulting side and decided to come back and join us when Sarah left, or when Sherry left. Sarah's part-time and administers the GIS program for us. She started the program way back when, and is very good. I'll have to say this publicly. It pains me sometimes, but she is excellent at what she does. Is very well known throughout the state agencies, and I have brought to committee before a funding request for an individual to assist with a project that Sarah will talk about. But this project is in the process of morphing into something that is well, quite more involved. Poor grammar, but yet I believe, and all the players involved really believe that the end results are really going to be worth it. So There was a briefing paper that was part of your, agenda packet, and that, was on page 34 of the packet. And, I will let Sarah go over this, but I will say up front that both the, first wilderness program and this have staffing implications and requests, for discussion on staffing, that we'll get to, maybe not this meeting. Sarah, I would.
Okay, so I think you've heard at a previous meeting, about the move towards next generation E911, and you probably also heard, some about that from the sheriff's, department and possibly emergency services, but this is just a move nationwide to improve E911 capabilities. E911 technology is currently quite outdated. It's using analog technology, and it can't accept lots of digital information that would be helpful. Can't accept, texts, and surprisingly can't accept GPS locations and can't accept video and photo, and obviously almost everybody has got a cell phone these days, and so there's a big nationwide push to redesign some standards and to implement next generation E911, which our department has a small part in that because we issue the E911 addresses for the county, and we also maintain the data that's used in the dispatch center. So in the call center, they're using New World software, and that software uses our data that we maintain and update in our department to locate calls when they come in. So historically, the data that we have maintained has been road center lines. So basically just a line following along the road, and for each segment of road between intersections, there's a range of addresses that fall along that road segment. So there's a left range and a right range. And this is how calls are located when they come in. The software receives the address coming from Verizon, who maintains that database. The call comes in. The software interpolates the location of the point along that road center line. This works relatively well. However, there are numerous addressing anomalies throughout the county. So historically, some counties in the state have chosen to address addressing problems, and by problems I'm talking about things where multiple structures may have the same address. There may be addresses out of sequence. There may actually be housing structures that don't have an address. In our county, this is a larger problem than in some other counties because we have such a high seasonal population that we have a lot of people who aren't receiving mail at their residence. So normally the address is resolved because people are receiving mail, and the post office will flag duplicates and work to deal with that. In our case, we have thousands of residences where people do not receive mail but should have a 911 address. So there have been historically a couple ways of dealing with all of these addressing anomalies. And in some counties, they've chosen to completely re-address the entire county. For example, when I was first out of college, my first job out of college was in Dutchess County, and my aunt and uncle also live in Dutchess County, and at that time, they undertook the task of completely re-addressing everybody's house and business in the county. As you can imagine, that was extremely unpopular. My uncle he's a forester, he runs his business out of his house. He had lots of letterhead and cardstock and business cards and all sorts of things printed with his address, which then changed, and he had to spend hundreds of dollars to update all of that, and that's just one person in a county of however many hundreds of thousands are in Dutchess County. So we don't want to do that. It's too difficult, not politically popular. The next best thing is to actually have a point in the GIS on each structure in the county with its associated E911 address. That way, when a call comes in, instead of having to interpolate along a set of address ranges where there may be anomalies in that range, the call can actually, the mass in the call center can actually go to that specific point on that rooftop or that driveway, if there's a long driveway into the structure, and definitively locate that property for emergency response. So the development of this data set is extremely time consuming. It's not something that we've been able to undertake at the county level due to staffing issues. Obviously, there's a lot of field work involved, there's a lot of data collection. The state was able to, through a number of various funding sources, work together with the E911 community, and they also used some broadband funding to develop address points for the entire state. They coordinated with us so that we were able to provide them whatever input data we had. We gave them our road center lines, we gave them our real property information. They were able to use some post office databases, and over the course of a year, they worked with a consultant to develop this data, which we took delivery of in November. So we have 40-something thousand address points in the county. However, there are lots and lots and lots of problems with this data because the consultant, wasn't enough funding to go out in the field, and so they were just using their best available data sources. And in many cases, we have situations where the state was not able to either locate a structure or determine a correct address. In particular, we have issues with condos and townhouses and apartment buildings and strip malls and anything where you have multiple structures on one parcel. So right now, we are in the very beginning process of reviewing and correcting all of this data, and it's quite a large undertaking. We have a temporary worker who worked 200 hours last year, and we have him for another 200 hours this year, which is going to be a drop in the bucket as far as going through this data. Also, Marty in our office has been working on this. We've also coordinated with the town of Queensbury, who has a full-time GIS person for the town, and is going to help us out with doing some of this review for the town of Queensbury. However, we have the rest of the county that we need to review. So we need to review all of these individual points and just make sure they're in the correct location and that they have the correct E911 address. As we're going through this, we're determining lots and lots of problems, so it just takes time to go through all of these and fix them. We also need to, there are a number of other databases that this database needs to work in sync with. So it needs to be in sync with our road centerline database, which as we work through this, we're correcting any issues that we come across with our road centerline database. Verizon also maintains two databases. All four work together in the dispatch center. So we've coordinated with Verizon, we've obtained their data, we have a good working relationship with them. There's an individual person assigned to Warren County to maintain the Warren County database, and we work closely with her. So we've gone through Verizon's database and matched it up with ours and identified problems. There's about 4,000 mismatches there. So we've identified them, are working on correcting them, and there's various different avenues involved in correcting them. So that's sort of the first component, which is just a large amount of staff time to review, update, and correct this data, all four of these databases, but primarily this new point database. We're hoping somewhere within the next 6 months that we'll get this database to a point where we're ready to put it into the dispatch center. Hard to say. We're at the very beginning stages of going through this, and we don't want to commit to that 6 months because we want to make sure that we have a good product that goes into the call center. We don't want to cause problems. We want it to be a plus and not a negative to have this new data set. We also need to establish procedures for moving forward with keeping this data set up to date. Currently, the way that we assign E911 addresses is at the request of the homeowner or property owner. So when they are beginning construction on a new project, they will come in. We have a form that they can fill out online or hard copy in person in the office. We charge a $15 fee. We have to wait to receive a check or cash payment. That has to be processed by the treasurer's office because we can't accept cash. And then after we receive that fee and any necessary information that we need, we'll issue an address, email them a letter that they can then provide to NIMO, who requires that to issue, to install electricity. Because this is a process that's initiated by a property owner, we have many cases where we're not aware of new development that's taking place. For instance, developers, and I won't name any names, but some of them have contacts in NIMO, and they will just make a guess as to what the 911 address should be, which may or may not be correct, and they sort of bypass this process. We also have cases where it's possible that a structure might not immediately be going up. So there may be cases, and we know there are cases, there are many cases, where a property may be subdivided, and somebody at the town, the property owner, the assessor, zoning administrator, the homeowner, will take it upon themselves to guess as to what their 911 address will be. They may or may not guess correctly. We also have cases where a property is subdivided and the assessor will just put in the same address for both properties that have been subdivided. That may not be an immediate issue because there might not be a structure on that second property, but that property may be sold, a structure may be built, they look in the assessor's database, they see the address assigned, don't realize it's the same address as their next door neighbor. They may not be getting mail delivery, so it may not be an issue. As far as mail is concerned, obviously as far as E911 is concerned, it's a big issue. We don't want to have two people next to each other with the same address, and you would be surprised as to how many cases of that we have. So, because we'll be responsible for maintaining this data at the point level, at the individual structure level, we'd like to change the mechanism in which we're assigning E911 addresses. We've worked out with the real property office so that they will notify us when a new subdivision is filed. We've been testing this out for the last month and it's worked well. The tax map technician is getting in touch with Marty in our office, who assigns the E911 addresses, sends a quick email and says, here's a new proposed subdivision, can you let me know what the new E911 addresses will be? Marty emails back to Ron, and Ron is then able to provide that information to the assessor, so it goes into the assessor's database. However, we also need to make hundreds of corrections to existing numbers. Some of this, we're trying to minimize the impact on homeowners, and we'll work in a way to keep the impact as minimal as possible, but where we come across instances where we do have two structures with the same address, we are going to suggest that the person who needs to change their address changes it. Because of these changes in this new data set, we're finding it infeasible to be able to continue to collect that fee. We need to be able to correct, and we need to be able to assign addresses up front without that process being initiated by the property owner. So I think that's the first thing that we're
And that goes back to agenda item number 1 under committee actions, is the elimination of the 911 addressing fee that was established by local law number 3, which is included in your packet. And I think when local law number 3 of 2011 really is I think Martin needs to take a look at this because it's outdated in that I believe real property has established their own fees for map generation because they do that now. And page 5 of that law talks about E911 addressing, and quite frankly, that needs to go away. It's just, we have to correct the database, and we have to assign 911 addresses for all these parcels, and you can't assume that you're just going to send bills out to people and they're going to be happy. We need this to work.
We've also done a survey, Oh,
Okay. Well,
okay.
we got-
Stop talking.
We have to be
We don't
careful
need
here.
any more convincing.
Yeah, my head's gonna explode here pretty soon.
I thought it already had, but.
Thanks a
Is
lot.
your brain full?
Can always
Is that
count
the
on
thing?
you for a foolish remark. All right, so we have a resolution, to amend the local law number 3 of 2011, and we have a second. Is there any other comment, or?
I would just ask Martin what that involves, since it's a local law.
Well, it's going to involve me taking a look at it, obviously. It's going to involve preparing revisions. It's going to involve coming back here to review those revisions. And then, once those revisions are satisfactory to this committee, I think it's going to, we're going to have to move it forward with a public hearing, which means it goes to the board for review, the full board for review, and then the board schedules the public hearing for the following month. So it's not a a couple of week process. It's a 2 or 3 month process, and really not the ability to quicken that process.
And that's my concern. I mean, we have other issues we can work with, but, part of the data set is we have to, identify E911 addresses. Well, when you do a town, you want to be able to do it complete, and not have to go back and finish, things. But if that's the process, we'll have to work around that. But that's, we'd like to expedite it as much as possible.
Well, I guess my question to Martin is, should we move this resolution prior to you?
I don't think so. I don't think you've seen the revisions. I think you've had a summary of what needs to be done, but you haven't seen the revisions. I think it's a matter of me getting together with the other staff here and learning a little bit more about this. I remember having a conversation with Wayne about this not too long ago.
Well, my motion is to move it forward into whatever direction it needs to go.
Yeah, but what you would be moving is resolution.
I think what we
Amendment
want to
to the
do is we
resolution.
don't want to put a resolution forward that's going to have to go to the Board of Supervisors to move it forward. If it's the committee's resolve today,
No, to move it forward to whatever steps it needs to take as
that's
the
fine.
next
I
legally
think that's
bound step.
appropriate. I think that's appropriate.
Okay, and you understand what his resolution is? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Before we move on, though, as Tara was talking here, and I'm thinking, wow, this is really complicated. Are we gonna have the funding in the budget to do this, or is that gonna be grants that you're going to obtain, or what?
Well, we're talking about that.
I'll keep moving forward, is that okay?
And I think
We'll
that's
cover
part
that.
of the discussion here.
So secondly, and I'm on the second page now at the top, and item B. So, right, sort of historically, it's been a mishmash of address assignments. Some have happened at the town level, and some have happened in our office at the county level. Over the course of the past couple of years, the county has assumed address assignment for every municipality in the county, with the exceptions of Queensbury and Stony Creek. Queensbury has historically done their own address assignments. They have a full-time GIS person who coordinates with us, and we have a process in place for dealing with that data. The only other town is the town of Stony Creek, and we would really like to assume the responsibility for E911 address assignment, given this new data set and the technical requirements for
I think
address
also to
assignment.
maintain the new data set is gonna require a significant software and, equipment purchased by the town, stuff we already have for the most part, but, so, right?
But, yeah, we can do that, but we do have a 911 facilitator. I mean, I guess my question would be, who else gets this data set besides, this guy?
So I'm gonna continue talking about moving forward with this.
Is this a parcel locator or a people locator?
It's neither. It's a structure locator. So this is a requirement for next generation E911, and this is being done statewide. In fact, it's being done nationwide. So this is just the direction that the technology is moving. There will not be a owner's name associated with the point. It will be solely a point and an E911 address associated with it. So there's no personal information, there's no phone number. There's obviously the phone number is coming from Verizon and coming into the call center, but in our database that we're maintaining, it's simply the point, and then the type of point that is, whether it's on the rooftop or whether it's at a driveway entrance if there's a long driveway into the structure, or whether it's a main entrance to a building if it's an apartment building, or a condos where there are multiple floors. And the purpose of this data set is just to improve emergency response. That's really the sole purpose of this data. We're not planning to put this on our public GIS site. Its purpose is for emergency response. So again, moving forward with maintaining this data in the future, one of the issues is that the existing points were located using aerial photography. So the vendor who developed the point data used the most current aerial photography, which typically in New York State is flown every 3 to 4 years, and they were able to look at the rooftops and put the points on the rooftops. We have some locations up in the North Country where, due to tree cover, it was difficult to determine where the rooftops are, and we will work with those and do some field work.
But also, Sarah, you could look at the SUNY Adirondack campus. We have one mailing address.
Exactly.
We need to fix that.
So
yeah.
we're going to be addressing all
And
of
you
these
got several
issues.
buildings.
Yep.
And now we currently go by building name.
Yep.
But not everybody knows what building is
Right.
what name, so this one would help.
It will help all of these
Resolve that.
situations
Yeah.
where we have multiple structures on a single campus, and you're not unique at, it's not unique at SUNY Adirondack. We have lots of camps where there are multiple structures on the same property.
Robert's Garden, like the apartments,
All the
it
apartments.
goes to the office building. But
Yeah.
it could be the third building back on the left, so each basically door or apartment needs a 911 address.
Yeah. And one of
Same with the malls, same with,
Yeah, all of these, yeah. So this will definitely help the first responders get to the appropriate location. This is becoming even more of an issue because, for the most part, the fire departments have local staff who are responding to emergencies and who are familiar with the roads and the local businesses and for the most part, can find their way around easily. However, we have a real big problem with EMS and the fact that in most of the county that's being contracted out, and there are not enough local providers who are responding to emergencies. And so we have people paramedics from Albany downstate who are being contracted off hours to come provide EMS services for Warren County, and they have no idea where things are. They don't, when they get a call with an address that comes through on their phone in a text message, they have no idea how to get to that location.
same with mutual aid. They come in from another town, they're not as familiar.
Yeah. So we realized moving forward, the data, like I said, the data that we have taken delivery of so far, points were located on rooftops using aerial photography. However, moving forward, because that aerial photography is only provided to us every 3 or 4 years, that's through a state program which may or may not lose funding at any time, there was concern about how we're going to be able to locate the structures to maintain the new points. So in talking this through, we realized that buildings and codes, buildings inspectors are out in the field and they're inspecting foundations and framing. They're inspecting the structure multiple times as it's being built, and we discussed how it might be possible for them to actually collect the location of those structures while they're out in the field. And we thought, wouldn't it be great if they could also maybe take a couple photos while they're out there? That would probably be helpful to first responders to actually have a picture of the house that they're responding to. So we approached building and codes. They were definitely willing to help and interested in the project. We tried to figure out the most simple and cost-effective way for them to be able to do this. We have a very high accuracy GPS receiver that we use to go out, you know, multiple thousands of dollars, piece of equipment that can locate infrastructure down to a couple feet. Not necessary in this case, we just need the point to fall within the building footprint, and we realized that we can probably do this with a GPS that's available in a tablet or a smartphone. So we did a little discussion with them and some investigation, got some quotes from
Dave?
IT, and kind of figured out the best, lowest cost scenario to enable them to collect this data in the fields, which would then be provided to us to incorporate it into this address point database. So the cost of that is about $1,500 for 4 tablets for their office. Also, they would need to have a MiFi card that goes into their tablet so that they have connectivity in the field so that they can use the GPS. And that is about, we need to get a formal quote from Scott, but somewhere in the neighborhood of $30 per unit per month. This also puts them in the position in the future that they can start collecting information on their inspections on the tablet in the field, as opposed to how they're doing it now, which is handwritten, brought back to the office, and then input by a database person in the office. So we're hoping that this positions them to sort of move forward technologically in their regular daily tasks, and that this can be a multi-purpose solution for them.
Okay. Sarah, we got 2 meetings here that are
I know.
backing up. I guess what I'm wondering is, we've got a lot of information here to look at. Is it possible that we could get just a few bullet points? This is what we have to do, boom, boom, boom. This is gonna be our cost. I think it would be a lot more understandable if we had that. Isn't anything we have to do today, any action we have to take today, is there?
Well, you talked about funding, and there may be a grant program from the state. We don't know. They're talking potentially a due date of March.
March 2nd or something like that.
So, what I kind of wanted to throw out was approval by the committee to secure and go after those funds, whatever they may be, and then the county would have the ability to say yes or no if we were to get funded, of the contract. So,
Can I have 3 minutes to talk about the second part of this, because we haven't talked about, there is one, as we were talking with Buildings and Codes, we became aware of a new state law that went into effect in January that requires truss-roofed buildings to be placarded and that information to be disseminated, both through the dispatch at the call center, and to the local fire chief. And we had a light bulb moment in thinking that we may possibly be able to coordinate these 2 projects. So the solution that had been come upon by, very tentative solution that had been determined by Buildings and Codes and by Emergency Services was to fill out a hard copy form, scan it, email it to Emergency Services, and then email that to the fire chief. So they're basically it would have a scanned document indicating that there was a truss roof building. Very difficult to locate that in the spur of the moment on a call. So I believe that we've come up with a relatively feasible solution for centralizing and managing this data in conjunction with the address points and then pushing it to the call center. We've had conversations with the town of Queensbury needs to be involved in this, and the city of Glens Falls, because they issue their own building permits, as well as Buildings and Codes here, Emergency Services, and then the Sheriff's Department because of the call center. I've had a discussion with New World, which is the software vendor for the call center, to see if what we're thinking is feasible. They've said that it is. So we think, we've talked with Brian Henry in detail. This is a problem that's facing all of the counties in the state, and nobody has really come up with a good solution to this. We think that we have a good, feasible solution that's worth further investigating. And so that's what the second part of this is involving.
What I would request is that if we could get the county administrator to coordinate a meeting of all the players in this, you know, I think Sarah's going to be the lead person on it, but I think if the county administrator was to kind of help coordinate and provide some direction that this is, you know, the preferred approach to all the players, I think it'd help the project along immensely. And out of that would come some recommendations that I think the county administrator could then bring to the board and the supervisors.
Joanne, do you think that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the sooner the better.
All right, and today then you're looking for a resolution to, seek, grant funding?
Yes, I don't know what the program is, you know, the
Kind of like a
state is-
blank check,
Right, I think the point becomes though that if there's an award, the county attorney's office and the county has a chance to review the contract and say, yes, we agree, or no.
So yeah, it's state archive funding. We're not 100% sure whether this project will meet the criteria. I have a conference call with them tomorrow so that I can explain the project and they can say, yes, this meets the criteria for this grant program, or no, it doesn't. If they say yes, then we'll go forward with preparing a grant proposal, which is due in early March.
Okay, would someone like to make the resolution based on the contingencies? Okay, second by John, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. All right.
That's all I had.
Well, I
That's
gotta
it?
tell you, I'm sorry, I put you on
That
first.
was my hour. That, you know, I requested an hour, that was it.
All right, no other business for planning?
No, we're all set.
Okay. Ed? Do we have an agenda for?
Ed Bartholomew? Someone drew the short straw today.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you gotta get used to it once in a while. This is just a reporting, we don't have an.
Very briefly, so that we can, for the board members of the Loan Review Committee, which is equally important because we do have one action to take, I wanted to, all of you have received a copy of our year-end report 2014 that we passed out at the board meeting. I'm making one, this is it, we're very short on our breakfast pamphlets with our left. We got 5 left, so there's still time to register for Friday. We have a number of supervisors that will be attending, including the chairman will be having opening remarks, but we have a good broad-based representation from the publisher of the Post-Star to the president of Angiodynamics, the president of SUNY, and the president of Aero Financial. So I think we can get a good broad section of what their opinions are on the economy going forward. One other thing I would like to mention is that we have started our second class orientation for the EPA job training program. Will be underway next Thursday and the following Thursday at the Department of Labor One Stop. Again, I'd like to acknowledge the great cooperation that we're receiving from the Warren County One Stop and the Department of Labor in coordinating with us this program. The program attended by Supervisor Taylor, our graduation, we had 23 graduates. 5 are now gainfully employed out of the 23. We still got a ways to go with the other 18, but this next class will be a total of another 25, and then we will have a third class commencing sometime in June for a total of 75 graduates. We're limited because of the materials that we are teaching in terms of hazardous ASWAPer, forklift and so forth. We're limited to about 25 applicants. So our next orientation will be next Thursday and then the following Thursday relative to that position. And that's, I'm going to stop.
Wow, that's, what a relief it is, huh?
I'm not making a comment.
No, we have spent a lot of time individually in some of the communities in the year-end report. I think covers pretty well the materials that I was going to cover again, today. I think we had a good year. We can have a greater year in 2015 right now.
Great. We don't have to approve. All right, thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
All right, motion adjourned. John, Evelyn, all in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
Carried. We'll now start our LDC meeting.